fun.
Okay, great.
All right, so let's get started. So officially our first episode of Behind the Sign for 2023.
Woo!
Super, super excited. What an amazing way to kick off the year is to have you on, Tom. I know we've been trying to coordinate for a couple of months because you're a busy dude.
Yeah.
So super excited to have you on. For anyone who doesn't know who Tom is, this is Tom Storey. He is a realtor team lead out of Royal LePage Signature, I believe it was.
Correct. Yep.
In Toronto, and runs the Storey team. No big deal. He usually does features on like CNN and stuff like that.
Global
So
News, CTV.
aren't we fancy having
We're
you on
fangirling today, just a little bit.
A little bit. We may have been a very bit nervous this morning, but it's all good. So what we wanted to have you on today for was because your tidbits always talk about Toronto, and the news, CP24, CNN, they always talk about Toronto.
Yep.
Well, us way out here in Dufferin, our show generally speaks specifically to Dufferin and Caledon because it's so close.
Yeah.
We really wanted to give our viewers like an overall picture from Toronto to Shelburne, what things are doing, because they are very different. But I know even within Toronto, and we talk all the time, that Orangeville to Shelburne to Caledon are all completely different. Thought it'd be really cool to have you on to kind of touch on those points, you know, as far as how prices have been affected there to what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Because we did notice some crazy differences just from the notes, that our discussion notes for the show today.
Yeah.
So before we really dive right in, I just want to let everybody know, if you're interested in learning more about Tom and his team, you can follow him on Instagram at the Storey team, and that is Storey with an E. You can also find him online at tomstorey.ca.
Sounds good. Thanks for that.
Absolutely. So I kind of touched on this a little bit, but our first question for you is, what the heck is Toronto proper? Because one of our questions, you know, us country bumpkins, okay? Like, I know the 6 and the GTA, GTHA.
Yeah, but Google doesn't tell you what Toronto proper is.
No. So our first question to Tom was, what areas do you service?
Sure.
Toronto or all of Toronto?
I mean, for me, what Toronto proper would mean is where I'm actually willing to do business and I won't refer it out.
Yes.
So, you know, basically it's like Toronto proper is where you would pay double land transfer tax, where you pay municipal tax and you would pay the provincial tax. That includes Scarborough, Etobicoke, basically north to Steeles is where the cutoff is. That's kind of the areas that we would service. But we're, you know, not Mississauga, not Markham, not York region. So I really like, if your cell phone number from 15 years ago started with 416, you probably lived in Toronto proper.
Right. Okay.
Okay. I like
Very
that
good.
definition. Excellent. So you're up.
Oh, I didn't want to talk about where he started.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I missed my notes. I'm getting all excited.
Everybody were referring to notes. We always like to reach out to our guests beforehand and kind of get a feel of who they are and like get some talking points, because as you know, we kind of get sidetracked a lot. We're trying to stay and make sure we take good care of Tom's time today.
So you mentioned in your notes that you went to school and then got into real estate right after and never looked back. My question was, well, what did you take in school?
So I'm just going to try something here. A few people are saying there's an echo.
Oh, okay.
I've got the computer turned down, but it seems like from my phone, there's an echo. Is it because I'm hearing myself on your end?
It's very
possible. Let me see if we can.
Could you just turn down the volume on your phone?
Volume's on the phone. We're turning down the laptop, but do not disturb on the thing.
I think
This is
No.
on Do Not
Yes.
Disturb. It's through Instagram. My
Right.
notifications, I have to.
Let me know. We have anyone watching, tell me if that's better.
You here. That doesn't work.
Because I think what your computer's picking up the Instagram feed. So it's
Yes.
echoing back.
It's picking up on the mic.
So if you want to turn me up on your computer and then turn me down on.
Let me try this.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me see if I switch this guy to individual. Maybe that will help too. We'll give that a try.
Is this better?
Let me know in the comments. I can still hear myself a bit, but.
Oh, sorry. That's really annoying. Something we'll have to work on for next time.
I think if you turn down the volume on your phone to 0.
We have the volume off on the phone.
Yeah, the volumes are off.
Doesn't make any
Okay,
sense.
it's because but it's still picking up your mic, which is coming through the computer.
Yeah, I think so. I think because we've got your volume on our laptop and then we've got a microphone here, I think it's connecting.
Should we shut
What
the
are you turning that off
microphone
and-
off?
Just so the laptop do work.
I don't know if that's going to be any better. Because
you
it's
shut it
the phone that's picking it up. His voice coming out of the laptop. It's
I'm
not
not
our
sure.
voices.
I'm not
it's
sure.
Tom's voices.
I think most people are watching on Instagram, so maybe we just focus on that one.
Right.
All right.
Ooh.
Just mute the laptop and turn that one up.
Friends, thank you
Yeah,
for letting
sorry,
us
sorry
know.
guys. I just want to make sure everyone can hear okay.
Is that
Is
better?
this any better?
Yeah, let me know in the comments here if this sounds better to everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone, for giving us feedback and helping guide us through this experiment.
Good thing Tom was watching the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is better. Yeah, I think we got to
Okay.
figure it out.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
Same on
Thank
you too.
you.
Deb was saying better, Chloe. Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Cool. All right, sorry about
Okay,
that.
so Tom, back to that. What did you go to school for, and what made you consider real estate at such a young age?
In the summer of my last year of high school, I was actually working for my uncle's company, and he would like hang TVs on walls when the TVs were like massive and you had to have like a full thing. And I worked with him on just a few jobs. And one of the jobs was this real estate agent's house in Toronto. And I didn't know anything about it. And I got talking to this guy and I just got very interested in it. And I thought like, okay, maybe that's something I explore here. But then I was telling myself, I was like, wait, my parents have lived in our house for 15 years. People don't move that often. That's actually kind of a difficult thing because, so I was going back and forth with it. So I went to University of Guelph. So my actual degree is in sociology.
Me too.
Yeah, which I literally used for nothing.
Yeah. I actually find it very useful.
Yeah.
I feel like everything kind of correlates into real estate one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe just like the understanding of humans and how we communicate and all that. Right.
Yeah.
But I was so certain I was going to do this that in fourth year, as I was wrapping up university, actually I enrolled for OREA at the time to sign up for my real estate license. So when I graduated, I was taking my third phase on the real estate courses. Basically did a little 2-week Euro trip and then came back. And for the last 9 years, this is now what I do.
Awesome. Good for you.
Well, I think it's safe to say you made the right call.
Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, we're happy that you did. And
Yeah.
I
guess we wanted to dabble a little bit into talking about our local markets. And we had
Sure.
kind of posed the question to you about what trends you're seeing. And in hopes that what you tell us about what's happening in the GTA, we can then kind of enlighten what we're seeing here and kind of compare notes, so to speak.
Yeah. So what I find kind of interesting right now is if we go back for a moment and remember what 2021 was like an absolute ridiculous market, multiples on everything. Everyone was complaining that there was nothing to choose from. There was no inventory. But in that same year on the Toronto Real Estate Board, our sales were up 35%. We did 125,000 transactions. Like there was the most inventory there has ever been. It's not. So in that market, we complain saying there's nothing to choose from, but there was just massive demand and not enough supply, even though historically it was the most amount of supply we've ever seen.
Yeah, we were calling it fast inventory.
It's fast. It was moving fast.
Yeah.
Now we're in this weird opposite effect where there isn't actually a lot of inventory, but the demand has been cut in half based on the interest rates and all the uncertainty that we have slow inventory.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's like if you run the month over month numbers for November, December, and even if you do a 3-month average for months of inventory, active listings divided by sales, we're still fundamentally like a seller's to balance market in most of these areas.
Yeah, us too.
But prices have kept going down. So it's like weird to say that we're balanced or in a seller's market when prices are shifting downwards, right?
Yeah.
So it's, obviously today's January 11th. I would expect maybe after the 15th, you're going to start seeing inventory actually hit the market. But I actually think that prices here, all dependent on what Bank of Canada does over the next few hikes. I think the next announcement is January 26th. There's a good chance that's another 25 points.
Yeah.
But I do think most of the damage was done last year. Like, I don't think they might get to 5%. They're at 4.25. We'll see what happens here.
Right.
Part of me
When you
thinks
say damage, you mean in terms of prices continuing to go down?
yeah, I think the biggest bulk of it's already happened.
Yeah.
I think it's understandably, if rates continue to go up slightly, you're not going to see prices go up. And it's weird because in different pockets, there's still literally nothing to choose from, and properties are getting 10 offers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on what it is. But there's still that standoff right now. Sellers don't want to give places away. And I actually think it's still way too early to fully understand what the 7 rate hikes did last year.
Mhm.
I agree.
Because
Yeah.
the only people that have actually felt the pain today had a variable rate mortgage last year,
Mm-hmm.
an adjustable variable that actually went up every rate, or if they
Right.
had a fixed variable that they've just hit their trigger rate.
Right.
And they're now going to be forced. So they're now going to feel the pain. I don't know. People are going to move because they're going to have to move. But I think this year is going to be more of like, I need to move, not a like, oh, this would be nice, let's give it a shot.
Right.
And do
Agreed.
you foresee a lot of downsizing because of all of this? I agree 100% that a lot of people are going to need to list. They're finally starting to interview people and put it on the news how much these rate hikes are actually impacting people's lives.
Mhm.
Because you hit the nail on the head. It's people who bought in the peaks. They way overpaid for their properties, thinking that interest rates are 0.25.
Yeah.
Right.
Now they've gone up instrumentally and they're almost, they are mortgage poor.
Mhm.
So do you think that's a trend that we're going to see coming, is downsizing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's going to start first with secondary and third properties that people have. They'd
Yeah.
rather offload their investment properties and their principal residence.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like a massive media organization yesterday texted me and said, do you have a client that's willing to come on the news that's selling because they don't want to foreclose on their house and talk
Yeah.
about it? I'm like, first of all,
No.
I don't.
No. No,
But even if I
actually,
did,
there was someone this morning. I was just listening to something, and they were saying because of our stress test, we have cushioned. So it's not. It's finances are going to have to get readjusted. Yes,
Yes.
but we're not in that danger zone yet.
no,
Yeah.
everyone, where the rates are at today, like prime's 5.75. So your variable mortgage today is 5.25 to 5.5. Your fixed rate's hovering around 5, depending on what you choose. So most people today from 2018, when the stress test came in for all mortgages, are good.
Yeah.
Like but we saved so much money in 2020 because we didn't do anything as a country. And I can tell you, like, I haven't yet seen the shift in my friend group and my family. I haven't seen people actively like tightening things up.
Yeah.
Because I
No,
still
haven't
think
either.
there's time here, and we're gonna have to go, okay, well, we got to stop going out for dinner here. We got to stop doing this. And CMHC puts out a mortgage delinquency rate report every quarter.
Mhm.
Going back to 2012, it was like 0.35. So less than 1%, less than a half of 1% of people couldn't make their payments.
Yeah.
The most recent report was Q3 of 2022, and it was 0.14.
Yeah.
So it's literally the lowest it's ever been. So Canadians pay their mortgage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I personally will get actually worried if rates go over, if like fixed and variable are well over into 6 to 7%. I think people are going to be in trouble. Is the truth.
And
Right.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize too. Like, we as realtors get probably inundated with consistent updates on what mortgage rates are available, prime and fixed,
Right.
variable and fixed. And there are primes available under 5%, like a 4.95, depending on your situation,
Mhm.
which to us who have owned homes for a very long time, that is a very decent rate.
Yes.
So it's interesting. I think there's still just a lot of questions about, are prices going to continue to go down? And I know personally, I've had a lot of sellers reach out saying, hey, you know what? This was a stepping stone for us.
Mhm.
We want to move it before we lose any more equity, and we'll just go and sit and hold tight for a little bit until we feel things are balanced. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, we had a few people last year where we sold their properties and they've been renting for the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
And frankly, for the first time in the last decade, other than a blip there in 2017, waiting has paid off.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you could make that argument. The counter argument would be, well, rates have gone up so much that your monthly payment's still the same,
Right.
even at a much lower price, but still long-term, mortgages aren't 5 years, right? They're 25, 30 years. It's
Right.
still better to buy at a lower price point. So yeah, we had a few clients do that. The opportunity that I see, what I personally did, like I bought a house recently. I moved up because that house came down significantly more than the property I was currently in, because I was going up the property ladder and price point.
Right.
Downsizing from a big house to a smaller property doesn't make as much sense as it used to when prices, but when you're downsizing, and let's say you own your place free and clear, it's like, yeah, sure, you could have got 200 grand earlier in the year, but it's a lifestyle choice at that point too. So it's not just we tend to look at things based on money. How's it impacting people? Where a lot of people are just like, I just want to do this.
Right.
This is better for my lifestyle. And I think we forget about that sometimes with the news headlines. Like, people need to live somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
And life still happens, to your point, like divorces happen, step
Babies are
down,
born.
babies are born. Yeah, like
Yeah.
life happens. It's going to keep happening. So
Yeah.
I think, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it's important to remember too that, oh shoot, I lost my point because we made eye contact there and I lost it. So we'll come back to that
Yeah.
point. So next.
So just going into the idea of like micro markets, we really want to touch on that because we're always talking about Orangeville versus Shelburne. Those are our two major competition markets. You spoke to us about, or noted, the two different locations with condos compared to EO2 in the beaches. So first of all, I had to confirm what EO2 was. Again, we're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Big city, little town, very different. So you're seeing that there's differences between the two markets. What are the major differences you're seeing? What's driving it? Like, give us some thoughts on that.
Yeah. What's funny is, for people that aren't on Treb or whatever, is that like E just means east, W means west, and C means central. And that's and then it's just based on how far away it is. So what's interesting is last year for condos across all of Toronto, median price, they actually only decreased $50,000. So I could easily make the argument that it's actually much more expensive to buy a condo today than it was even in February last year, because prices haven't come down anywhere close to as much as the rates have gone up.
Yeah.
Question to that though, I recall watching the news, and obviously the news only gives you so much, but did condos significantly decrease when COVID hit? So are we like lower and now we're just kind of maintaining?
Most condo prices are back to about November 2019. So what happened, which sounds like bad, but so what happened was they were really good up to the pandemic. Then they dropped 10% in 2020. They took a beating when everything else was going crazy, because everyone was leaving the city and never coming back until they did come back.
They came to us.
A lot of them came back.
They came to us.
They drove our prices up.
Right. Exactly. And then what happened last year is condos started very strong like everything else, and then tailed off again.
Right.
So it's like condos went down, caught back up, and went back down again. So we've had 3 years of this instead of having like nice growth.
Yeah.
So yeah, condos are really interesting. Like inventory wise, the most amount of inventory we have right now in Toronto is condos. It's the most amount of inventory sitting. And even though the prices haven't come down as much as detached and semis and townhouses, they take a lot longer to sell.
Okay.
It's slow. It's slow for condos right now.
And I remembered my point.
I won't look at you.
I wrote it down. My point being, just it relates to all of these topics, is that prices increased so quickly since 2017. That was a crazy spike in the historical charts, and then it kind of plateaued, and then again, obviously in 2020, late 2020. It's gonna be interesting because I still feel, and if you feel the same, that sellers have this expectation that if they just hang on a bit longer, they're gonna see that huge spike again. Historically, this is unprecedented. So I'd love to just hear your 2 cents on.
I mean, if sellers are waiting for February prices of last year, I think they're waiting minimum 3 years, probably 5 to 7 years. Like, truthfully,
Yeah.
I don't think that's coming back. That 2021 year transactions and prices is going to be an outlier for a long time.
Yeah.
And as I mean, that's in the city in Toronto, like for us to see that kind of growth and the growth that we saw is unheard of so quickly. I mean, when you're talking up in the Great White North of Shelburne and the average detached was going for 1.2 in the peak, that's just bananas.
We had townhouses going for 1.1, like that was.
Yeah.
What was it before the pandemic? Like early 2020, like January 2020, what's a detached in that area?
580.
Yeah.
So it doubled.
Oh,
and then where is it today?
Pardon me?
What's it at like right now? Like what would it be right now?
So if we talked Dufferin as a whole, average detached in Dufferin, we're sitting around.
You can't go with the average detached because you're up in the 1.1 range, whereas Shelburne is very different right now.
Yeah,
Orangeville's holding our price.
If we're looking year over year, because Shelburne, like we've had a huge hit. We've only sold about 9 properties per month for the last 4 months.
So there's limited data too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to even do a comparison. That's what was our point when we're discussing our market stats for this month. It's so skewed for the last month because there was so little transactions.
Well, not even just the last month. Like for them down, Orangeville's the big city for us. But
yeah,
average detached here year over year, we're talking 850. So still a significant amount of growth compared to.
So if you owned from 2019, you should. It's like my favorite analogy is like you walk into a casino with $100.
Yeah.
You double it on your first game you play. You have 200, and then you play a little bit more, and you leave with $140.
Yeah,
you're still up.
Did you lose $60 or did you make $40?
Yeah.
Like that's the same thought process, right? So, and then what we have to really figure out is like how many homeowners bought in the peak with a variable rate mortgage. What percentage of the country was that?
Right.
Huge. Oh, that'd be an interesting number.
I don't know.
But even looking at that, you're not locked into that. Like you can lock into a fixed rate and still maintain affordability. Like there's options. We're not, the sky is not falling in the sense that we're all going to lose our houses. There's multiple options to secure ourselves.
No, we just got used to how it was. And
that's what I mean. My whole analogy over this whole last couple of months has been greed. Like we got greedy. Yeah. What investment do you do that within 2 years you gain 65%? That's what we've gained here in Dufferin County. Well, 65% in equity.
It's not just real estate. The stock market went crazy in 2021.
Yeah.
It came down last year. I'm like obsessed with watches. The Rolex market took a beating this year. Like everything. It's the world. It's it's everything. It's not like it's just housing, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking with Brendan Ogmanson, and he's the chief financial economist for the BC Real Estate Association.
Yeah.
And he said that real estate's a lagging and a leading indicator. So we didn't start feeling the pain of the stock market for a few months.
Right.
But also when things turn around, even though technically we're not in a recession right now, for real estate agents, the last 6 months, it felt like one because things change so much. And when the turn back happens, whenever that happens, we will be the leading indicator going back up before we actually start noticing it. So
yeah,
100%.
So what else do we want to cover?
Yeah, next on the docket was okay. So you already touched on this a little bit. We wanted to spend a lot of time talking about your journey and why, as a real estate agent and a successful one, it's not like you're just some Joe Blow that sells maybe 1 or 2 houses a year. Like you know your stuff, and you made a huge choice this year to sell your condo and buy a house. And you touched on it a little bit, but we really wanted to dig in to give our non-realtors and inside perspective as to why you would do that, because I'm sure you've gotten some comments that people think you're cuckoo.
And rebuttal we're holding back and we're in panic mode and we don't want to make any moves.
Well, I think, the last decade, we would all say that was a really good market, but who was it a good market for? Sellers.
Right. Sellers. Yep.
Right. It was a good market for sellers, not a great market for buyers.
Yeah.
Now we could argue that it's not a great market for sellers or people that bought early last year, but it's a good market for buyers that were saving or trying to get to a certain point because there's less competition. It's certainly You know, it used to be that it was easy to get a client to a house, but hard to get the transaction done. Now it's hard to get them to the house, but easier to get the transaction done if they're interested in it, right?
Right.
So I was looking at a certain area that I probably wouldn't have done this for another 2 years if last year didn't do what it did. And in February 2022, the condo I sold was probably worth 900,000. I sold it in the end of the summer when things were really quiet for 825. So I took a $75,000 delta on that. Okay. So
Okay.
Right.
the house I bought, now this was a wild comp, but there was a house that sold for 2.2 in February 2022, identical to the one I bought. I paid $400,000 less for the house.
Wow.
Nice.
So if I'm looking at the numbers net, I'm actually ahead almost $300,000. If I had done this in February, it wouldn't have been better for me.
Right.
So the reason why I did it now is because I'm going to do it now when things are decreasing and you're interested for lifestyle reasons to upsize, there could be an opportunity for you.
Right.
So
But-
the same thing we've always been pushing home is focus on the purchase price because you can't go back on that.
Yeah.
Whereas rates change. They're different. You can, you know, what is the saying? Marry the house, date the rate. That we're all sick of hearing that, but
And,
Yeah.
and
it's
that
so true.
that saying is very American because
Yeah.
their rates, they can change them. And they have 30-year fixed rates at like 2.5 that people took. Ours we call them variable and fixed, but they're not fixed. They're for a certain period of time. And then you
Right.
got to up it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I'm going to take on the biggest mortgage payment I ever have. By the way, I took a 1-year fixed.
Ooh.
Yeah. I was gonna just ask you about that. Yes. Yeah.
So I
You're
took a
little
1-year
nervous
fixed
on where
under
they're gonna land and
5%.
have to resign.
Yeah. A 1-year fixed under 5%. I've only ever taken a variable mortgage up to this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I learned a lesson last year.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think historically variables have been the way to go because we've never seen this kind of fluctuation like this. These increases in 2022 have been unprecedented.
Historically,
there's
they've
still
been
no end.
dropping since
Yeah.
what 2019. I think was the last time we've seen significant decrease.
But
Yeah.
they say it's a sign of your economy's health, what your interest rates are. But so it's interesting to get your insight because I think there are many, many sellers out there that are in your shoes. And essentially the message is look at the whole picture
Yeah.
and your bottom line and not just what you're looking to buy and how much or what you're looking to sell,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
And how much you're losing at the end of the day because it's not a loss.
Yeah.
So I guess just spinning off on that, like you have, we watched some of your other shows and you talk about the three fundamentals, interest rate, immigration, unemployment being major factors that are going to change it or drive our economy, the real estate market. Knowing all of these things like interest rates, we know they're high, potentially could sit where they are, could drop, could go up again. We don't really know. Immigration, we're set to bring a lot more people into the downtown area. You said before that it's going to like really push the GTA. Unemployment is good right now. Like we have good numbers in our unemployment. So these are all things that we've been pushing to our viewers and saying like, this is not the end of the world. The sky's not falling. It's a good environment to be buying in if it's the right time for you. So just a piece of advice that you would give to anybody that's been sitting on the sidelines, considering moving, but not quite sure, like, should I do this? Should I wait? What would you tell somebody?
my advice is all four of us can tell you when the market bottomed, but 3 months later.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
You can never time the market.
So it's coming back up. You
Yeah.
can't
So
tell.
one of the first questions, and it could bottom and then go back up and then bottom even more. So like, who knows, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the first question I would ask any buyer right now is how long are you going to own this property for?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So if minimum, they're going to tell me 5 years, then I would go, okay, if that's enough time, that whether the market goes crazy good or crazy bad, probably that's enough time to see things out here and level off at a certain point. Right.
Mhm.
If it's a 1 or 2 year hold, maybe just rent. Because actually there's a case that you could lose more money. Selling a property is expensive.
Yeah.
I just paid double land transfer. It's ridiculous the amount of money it costs to move. Right.
Yeah.
So I'd rather sell you a property now that you're going to be in for the next 5-10 years, then sell you something you just bought because you thought you should do it, and then you come back to me in 2 years and you're like, I don't like this anymore, because
Right.
that's actually going to cost you way more money than just getting something and holding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I find our positions interesting because I try to come from it from a non-bias. We don't force people to make decisions. We help them understand what's going on and do our best to, to give realtors the credit that the market's going up or market's going down is giving us way too much credit. We literally, the market's the market, and we work in it.
Right.
But they sure love to blame us for it either way.
Good and bad. Yeah.
But if
We
you're going to
drove
blame
the
us for the
market.
ups, how come it's going down? Right? Like, we don't actually have that much control. The market's the market, and we're just a part of it. But then it's tough because you don't want to come at these questions from a place of excuses and just being ultra positive on everything. But long term, I want to own real estate.
Yeah.
I've said this on other podcasts and things before, but I heard this at a real estate conference like a long time ago. Someone said, I've been to a lot of real estate agents' funerals, but never a retirement party.
Yeah.
We don't have a pension. My pension is my properties. I think owning real estate long term will be a good thing for me. That's why I'm not too concerned about short term fluctuations in the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the long-term game, and I've spoken to a lot of realtors recently, probably within the last 5 to 6 months, who are all saying this is the year I'm buying that investment property or the next one. Because again, back to that point of, are we ever going to see prices lower than this? I don't think so.
Probably not. I don't think so.
Maybe minor adjustments, but nothing like what we've
significant.
experienced.
We're not going back to 2008.
No, probably not. If that happens, there's other things going on that we got to be a lot more worried about. There's wars
100%.
happening. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
So just for shits and giggles, I'd love to compare. We know because we've been creeping you and watching a bunch of your recent stuff, and we try to keep on track of what's happening. But what are the average, like Toronto as a whole? I don't think there's not a lot of towns and semis, but what are the average prices going right now? Because we'd love to compare them to what's happening here and maybe help some people from the city gain some perspective that if Toronto's out of reach, we're not that far.
And we don't have double land transfer tax.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
the only thing we've got is that our property taxes are actually lower compared to the value of the house, but our property taxes are about to go up next year. So
Yes.
that we might lose that one.
5%.
The right. And again, these are me going off November, December numbers where less transactions happen, but give or take, to buy a detached property in the 416 area code, it's $1.5 million. And then you go up from there for something move-in ready, nice. Now, what that means in Toronto is a 25 by 100-foot lot in a good area with a good school district, 1-car parking, 3-bedroom finished basement. Like, it's not, these are not even necessarily 2,000 square foot houses. They're like 1,700 square foot houses.
Yeah.
So that's also important to know what you actually get, not just the price, because your properties are much bigger, and you actually have land, right?
Right.
Semis are closer to like 1.2 right now for like a move-in semi.
Okay.
Condos are hovering in like the 650 to 680 range, depending on that's every type of condo clustered into
right.
one.
I mean, that's a very generic. It's hard to narrow that down.
And then your freehold townhouses are like 900 to $1 million.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Not as high as I thought they were going to be, though, if I'm being perfectly honest.
But if you're looking again to Tom's point, what you get here, like you look at, we're sitting in my house right now, but if you're looking at my house, which is 1,800 square foot, I've got a good decent sized yard, double car driveway, 1.5 garage, finished basement. I'd probably be 750, 800 right now.
Yeah.
And that's to your comparable 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Toronto's
and
still
obviously
expensive.
it's going to depend on what people need to do for work and so on. I think a lot of people thought they were going to move up here and work from home forever, enjoy the country life, and then they realize, holy shit, there is so much to owning a rural property.
So much snow.
Have you guys had the Toronto buyers that bought in the last 2 years that realized, okay, we bought this as a secondary property, now we want to short-term rent it? Is that becoming an issue in your market? where like Airbnbs are popping up everywhere.
So I wonder if that's partially it.
Yeah.
We
But
don't have a huge short-term rental up here.
not a lot, no.
So it's your typical like 1-year lease. There are a lot of those happening.
Have you looked at Airbnb lately? Our Airbnb, like maybe 2 years ago, you could find like 2 or 3 places on the Airbnb. There's like hundreds now. It is insane. It blew up. So and these are like a bedroom for rent, a basement for rent. So that I don't think it's whole dwellings, but there's definitely some need for the short term.
But we have seen a lot of them bite off more than they can chew with the coming from Toronto. As far as maintenance and expectations that way, commuting, and then they come here and they're completely overwhelmed because it is such a different lifestyle.
So I'd say that's on their primary residence and not the secondary.
Yeah, like we
More
saw
primary.
a huge influx of people interested in like rural properties, like anything over an acre in size.
Multi-generational.
And it shot the prices up in our rural areas like crazy. That's kind of leveled off now. Like the demand has completely disappeared for that.
Yeah, and that was probably happened last summer. Just all of a sudden, just dropped off, gone. And I
Yeah.
think that's when they really started opening things back up again, and businesses calling people back.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, "Oh, it takes me an hour and a half to drive one way to get to Mississauga. It's a lot."
That's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I think everything this year is going to come down to like, are we actually going to? Because sellers are hearing the same news that buyers are hearing, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't need to sell, you're like, well, why would I put it up if I'm being told the market is not in a good place right now? Like, because that's what the news is feeding you, right?
Exactly.
So it's all going to depend on how much actual inventory we have this year in any market. It's all across Canada. Like, it's all going to be the same thing. And our buyers, I can tell you, are already complaining like there's nothing to see.
No.
Yeah.
It's the same old, and that was something that, Jess was looking into those stats because you sent us some details, but we dug a little further as far as, okay, how much of the inventory you have on is stagnant? Like how much is stale? How much has been sitting around for months and months and renewed? And it was high.
Yeah, like we're sitting at 2.7 months of inventory in Orangeville right now, but 55% of that is over 30 days.
Yeah.
Where when you go back to the height of things, they weren't even lasting a week on the market. That's a big shift. So yeah, we've seen, and then when we looked at Dufferin as a whole, it was even worse. It was almost 75% of the inventory has been listed, has been over 30 days.
Well, I guess it kind of makes sense because like if you listed in December, that was probably a bad month to list anyways.
Right. Yes.
And then it goes super quiet and then you're into the new year. So you're stale.
Yeah.
I would say this trend has been for a while.
But this has been, we've really slowed. Yeah.
Quite a bit. And even I find like my buyers are kind of like, hey, Sarah, are you going to send me an email? Like, is there any inventory? Are there any houses to look at? And it's just so stale. I think the last week we saw a few come on, but I don't anticipate it getting any busier until probably spring market. Like, I
would agree.
Tom mentioned earlier, I think mid-January or after this next announcement, we'll see. That tends to drive people to it, but
we need to get comfortable again with like what's going on.
You know what needs to happen is there needs to be a Bank of Canada rate announcement where they hold.
Yes. 100%.
I'm
just give some people a little bit of confidence.
And it's not likely that's going to be January, so it could be the March one.
Right.
And if they do, it all depends on the numbers that come out with unemployment and everything else with inflation. But if they hold, I think buyers will go like, okay, we know what the rates are now. We understand what we're getting ourselves into. It's not going to change on us. Like last year, how could you make sense of anything? From April till the end of the year? Every month was a complete shit show of like, well,
it was FOMO last year.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah.
So I think
it's going to be really interesting, especially, we talk about immigration and we talk that we're already still experiencing a housing shortage.
Yeah.
And I do find it interesting to hear that Toronto is in the same boat, that you're still historically really low as far as inventory.
Yeah.
We're definitely experiencing the same thing, but man, if we bring in 400,000 new immigrants, some of the best qualified buyers I had in 2022 were immigrants.
New immigrants.
They came here, they had their down payment. So many other countries are so much better educated than we are on their financials and economics and preparing themselves.
You know why?
You know
because because Canadians, you get told, hey, you buy a house, you own it for 30 years, and that's your retirement. Don't worry. We don't
Right.
have to be as savvy with other investments because we've got this nest egg where
Right.
other countries, real estate doesn't do what it does. So you have to find other ways to make money.
Right.
It's also a lot of it's generational though, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but my parents were not in a position to set me up and help me buy a house.
Yeah.
But I found a lot of the new people coming in, that's their situation, which is amazing. And I think we need to learn from that.
Mhm.
But case in point, there are going to be some stiff competition for existing like Canadian first-time home buyers. We
Trying
pretty
to-
much wiped
yeah.
them out of the market right now with rates like this, but
Yeah.
it's not going to get any better, is my opinion.
What's your, like on that note, I guess to wrap things up, what's your take on 2023 for in terms of an outlook overall? What do you predict?
Yeah, I think affordability is not going to change. Rates might go up, prices might drop, but the average cost of owning that property isn't that much different from what it's been the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny that we banned foreign buyers, but then tripled our immigration. So,
Yes.
like,
Good
great
move.
political move.
At least they're going to build, what was it, 1 million new homes for
Well, I guess, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. For
You
the
know,
housing buyers in line waiting to get in.
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of that immigration too might rent first. You know, they're not all going to buy first, and 400,000 doesn't mean we need 400,000 homes. There's families, right? So
Right.
but still, it's going to make an impact. I actually think we could end up with the same amount of sales volume as we did in 2022 total,
Mhm.
because I feel like by Q2 this year, we're going to at least feel okay about there's a bit more certainty in what's actually happening, and people are going to move because they want to move. It seems like the speculation's been yanked out of the market, which I think most people would be excited about.
Right.
That people aren't just buying for the fact of buying the house. I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting year. It's like, even to me, I've been so wrong with my predictions that I'm like nervous to even say what's going to happen. this
Say it
year.
out loud.
We're gonna
Yeah.
come back to you in 8 months and be like, you were wrong.
Hey, but you're not alone, and at least you can say that, because
Yeah.
we all know, and it's, the media conglomerates, and they love to promote doom and gloom, which is why we love to see you on there speaking truth and like, listen, this is what it is. Get used to it.
Yeah.
But there was another one out, I think it was yesterday, saying that all doom and gloom until 2025, like everybody's screwed until 2025.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's to your point. It is, if you are in need, it's still a good time to buy or sell, depending on your situation. There's still nothing we can do about it.
I can guarantee one thing: there's never going to be a month where 0 homes sell.
Never.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
So-
come to Melbourne, we're close.
Yeah, well, maybe for the entire area, not specific pockets. But like,
Yes.
people move because things happen in their life. They have babies. There's estate sales, unfortunately. There's divorces, unfortunately. There's a lot of things that happen, right? There's getting into. I moved to get into a specific school district.
Right.
Yeah.
People are gonna do that. It's not. What I find interesting is even inventory levels. You look back to 2008, which we're comparing, although the reason behind the market shifting are completely different.
Right.
2008, we had almost double the amount of inventory we have now.
Mhm.
And in 2008, this is just for Toronto, but it's probably similar numbers across the board. 1989, even worse. The worst drop off we ever saw. That year in Toronto, when our population was 3.5 million, it's 7 million now for GTA.
Mhm.
44,000 people bought
Treated.
properties on the Toronto MLS.
Yeah.
Now we've doubled in population, and 75,000 people did something last year.
Right.
So
People are still moving.
people are going to move. I've been talking to a lot of experienced agents that are like, when the market was bad, we just worked. We didn't care. It just was what it was.
Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head there with that one too, is we saw a huge influx of new agents in 2020 because, they were getting their license in 2019, nothing really else to do. So, hey, it's easy. Let's take a buyer out and sell them a house.
Make a lot of money.
Now we're back to the grind of actually having to know how to do your job,
Yeah.
know the contracts and the ins and outs of the law. So I think that's an interesting
It
point.
doesn't take a week to buy a house or sell a
Ah.
house.
2
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to work 4 times harder for
Yeah.
the same result this year than in previous years.
Yeah.
And some people are good, aren't going to cut it, frankly, because they haven't had to do it before.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't wish failure on anybody. I think it's maybe a good thing for the industry that you're dealing with people that have been through it before, a bit more experience and know what's happening, and give sound advice on, the best to our ability.
Right.
But it's not going to be easy this year for anybody, and that's okay.
Yeah. But a good point, find an agent that knows how to do the work and do the hard work, because it's not as easy as it seems. One last question before we let you go. I know you're a super busy guy, but I'd love you to give your insight on this market, buy first or sell first.
Whatever's more difficult,
So
sell.
Yeah. So.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's right now, I'm sure you guys find the same. It's a lot of pushback from sellers in that regard because of the lack of inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? It's just the opposite of the old issue we used to have, which was like buy first, but I can't get a place. And then, as long as you can do it within a 90-day period, if you are one of those people that's like, I want to buy first, I want to find my place, whatever you think your property is worth, take away 50 grand from it and use that as your threshold number.
Yeah.
And learn what bridge financing is right now and figure out.
Absolutely.
Totally.
good point.
Awesome,
Awesome.
Tom.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you again so much for coming on today. We really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we'll be able to get you on again soon.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Ciao for now.
Enjoy your
Have a
day.
good one.
Take care.